My name is Julia Fernandez, and I'm a night patrol officer. My job is to monitor the lonely roads of a remote town in Canada where I live. One quiet night, while driving along a deserted route, something strange and unexplainable happened in the sky above. It was around 3 a.m, and darkness ruled every corner of the landscape. The only company I had was the sound of the patrol car's engine and the wind whispering through the trees. Suddenly, my attention was drawn to some bright lights appearing on the horizon. At first, I thought they were shooting stars, but I quickly realized something wasn't right. The lights moved erratically, performing maneuvers impossible for any plane or conventional helicopter. They seemed to dance in the sky, forming baffling shapes and patterns. My instincts as a police officer kicked in, and I felt the need to investigate. I pulled over to the side of the road and stepped out to get a better look at the mysterious lights. The cold night air clung to my uniform as I stared upward. The lights continued their dance in the air, constantly changing shape and color. They shifted from a yellowish hue to an intense electric blue, illuminating the dark surrounding landscape. There was no logic behind what I was witnessing. I decided to contact the police station by radio. I reported the situation and requested backup to investigate the strange lights in the sky. However, static filled the air, making any clear communication impossible. My pulse quickened, and a sense of unease gripped me. The lights in the sky began to converge into a single point, forming a blinding glow. A mixture of awe and fear filled my mind as I witnessed the celestial spectacle before my eyes. Suddenly, a deafening hum filled the air. The vibration resonated through my entire body, making me feel a strange connection with the lights above. My mind was flooded with unanswered questions as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. In the blink of an eye, the lights shot upward into the sky and vanished into the endless darkness. I stood there, trying to process what I had just witnessed. My duty as an officer was to remain calm and protect the citizens, but this experience had left me shaken. I returned to my patrol car and continued down the lonely road, my thoughts dwelling on that inexplicable encounter. The remote town in Canada would never be the same for me again. Since that day, I've continued to work night shifts, but now with a different perspective. The cold night air pierced my bones as I walked along the deserted road. My name is Alfonso Perez, and I was heading home after my last university class. It was around 10 p.m., and since I lived near the campus, I preferred walking over, waiting for the uncomfortable and slow night bus. As I walked through the darkness, shadows loomed around me. I remembered the stories I'd heard about this road, strange noises, flickering lights, even tales of sinister encounters. But I decided to ignore all those stories. What could be so terrifying about a simple road? My footsteps echoed in the silence of the night. A chilly wind blew through the trees, making the leaves rustle and swirl around me. I felt a growing sense of unease as tension clung to my skin. I quickened my pace, hoping to reach home soon. Then, suddenly, I heard a faint whisper coming from the void. My heart began to race. I looked around nervously, but saw no one. I shook my head, blaming the sound on my overactive imagination. I had to stay calm. I kept walking, but the whispers grew louder. The voices were indistinct, yet filled with anguish and desperation. They seemed to come from all directions, whispering incomprehensible words in my ear. I felt a massive chill, and once again the urge to flee overtook me. My steps turned into a sprint as I tried to escape the sinister whispers, but no matter how fast I ran, the sounds followed closer, louder. Fear clouded my mind, and the road seemed to stretch endlessly in front of me. Suddenly, the flashing headlights of a car approached from behind. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe if someone else was present, the whispers would disappear. I waved my arms frantically, trying to signal the driver to stop. The car pulled up beside me, and the driver rolled down the window. It was a man with a shadowy appearance, dark eyes, and a piercing gaze. His voice was deep and chilling when he spoke. "Need some help?" he asked with a sinister smile. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked at the man with suspicion. Instinctively, I took a step back, remembering the warnings I had received about unexplained events on that lonely road. But fear and anxiety began to override my judgment. "No thanks. I'm fine," I replied, with a trembling voice, trying to sound confident. The man insisted slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. I felt intense dread as his gaze seemed to read my darkest thoughts. "As you wish," he whispered ominously. The man sped off into the night. Though I had avoided a potentially terrifying encounter, a deep unease settled within me. I knew there was something sinister and mysterious about that deserted road, something I couldn't explain. I pushed my fears aside and continued walking home, staying constantly alert. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow filled me with dread. But at last, I saw the familiar lights of my neighborhood and let out a sigh of relief. When I entered my house, I shut the door behind me with force, feeling a brief moment of safety. I promised myself I would never again ignore the warnings and would stay alert to any signs of danger. That night, as I curled up in bed, the memory of the dark road and the sinister man haunted my dreams. I knew the terror I experienced would never fully fade, leaving an indelible mark on my mind. Since then, I've completely avoided that lonely road, preferring longer but more populated routes. I learned to listen to warnings and trust my intuition, always remembering the world can harbor terrifying, unexplained forces. My name is Mark Thompson. I'm a retired ex-military man, now living a quiet life in a town far from the city. But there's one story that still haunts me, an experience on a deserted road that chills me every time I remember it. It was a dark and rainy night. I had decided to drive back home after visiting an old comrade. It was around 2 in the morning, and there was barely any traffic. The rain pounded against the windshield, reducing visibility. My hands gripped the wheel tightly, trying to keep the car steady through the storm. As I drove, a strange feeling crept over me. A sense of pressure filled the air, and a haunting stillness settled around. It felt like I was being watched by something invisible, something sinister. Suddenly, the car's headlights went out completely. The engine died, and the vehicle stopped abruptly in the middle of the deserted road. My heart raced as I tried to understand what was happening. I tried to restart the engine several times, but it was useless. I was trapped in the darkness, the rain pounding relentlessly on the roof of the car. The situation grew more desperate with each passing minute. I decided to get out and assess what was going on. Rain soaked my uniform, and the cold wind pierced my skin. I looked around for help, but the road stretched out empty in both directions. That's when I saw it, a dark figure approaching slowly in the distance. My military instincts kicked in, and a wave of adrenaline surged through me. I didn't know if the figure was friend or foe, but I couldn't afford to lower my guard. As the figure came closer, I could make out its features, a tall, thin man wearing a dark coat, soaked by the rain. His face was hidden by shadows, but I could feel his penetrating gaze locked onto me. "Do you need help?" he asked, his voice eerie and cold. His words echoed in the air, sending shivers down my spine. I didn't respond immediately. My instincts told me something was off, but desperation pushed me to accept his offer. The man stepped closer and extended his hand towards me, but as our fingers were about to touch, an overwhelming sense of danger surged within me. I quickly pulled back, avoiding his touch. In that moment, the man let out a supernatural screech, and his form began to fade into the air. That's right. He vanished like a shadow at dawn, leaving only the echo of his chilling scream in the silence of the night. My heart pounded as I stood, stunned. I felt a deep shiver run through my spine, and I knew without a doubt that I had escaped something terrifying. I rushed back to the car, and to my relief, the engine started again. I sped away from that lonely road and the unsettling figure. The rest of the drive home passed in an uncomfortable silence. Unanswered questions swirled in my mind. But one thing was clear. I had come face to face with the supernatural. Since that incident, I've avoided that road as if it were cursed. Stories of paranormal encounters and disappearances in that place spread through the region, though few dared to enter its darkness. That experience taught me that there are forces beyond our understanding, forces that lurk in the night. As a former soldier, I was used to facing tangible threats, but this reminded me that there are things far more terrifying than any human enemy. Even now, as I rest in my home, I still wonder what it was I encountered on that deserted road. The uncertainty and intrigue remain, leaving me with the disturbing feeling that there is much more to this world than we believe. Who was that dark man? What was he looking for in the night? I may never know the answers, but one thing is certain. I'll always be alert and prepared for any encounter with the unknown, knowing the world hides unimaginable secrets in every shadow along the solitary roads. My name is Daniel Porterreal, and I'm a taxi driver in a small city. For years, I've driven the roads, taking passengers from one place to another. But there's one story that left me speechless and gives me chills every time I remember it. A paranormal experience on a lonely road that defied all logical explanation. It was a quiet, starry night, with not a single cloud in the sky. My last ride of the day took me down a remote road surrounded by fields and forests. The clock struck midnight. When a call broke the silence in my cab, a man with a distressed voice requested a pickup from a remote location near the road. I felt a mix of unease and duty as I headed toward the meeting point. As I ventured deeper into the road, the streetlights began to dim inexplicably. I felt surrounded by oppressive darkness, and a chill ran down my spine. That's when I noticed flickering lights in the distance. They blinked in a strange pattern, their intensity rising and falling as if trying to send a message. Intrigued and cautious, I sped up to reach the source of the mysterious lights. When I arrived, what I saw took my breath away. A ghostly figure wrapped in a faint glow stood by the road. It wasn't a ghost, it was a real person. A man, middle-aged, with a distressed and disoriented expression. I rolled down the window and asked if he needed help. With a trembling voice, he told me his car had broken down, and he had been walking along the road for hours searching for help. His story struck a chord with me. My sense of humanity overcame any fear, and I invited him into the taxi, offering a safe space and a chance to find a solution. During the ride, he revealed a terrifying experience, strange lights in the sky, and a sinister presence stalking him. He had abandoned his car in desperation, but the road felt endless. As we spoke, a sense of unease grew in me. I glanced at the rearview mirror, and to my surprise, the flickering lights were still there, following us. We arrived at a nearby town where the man was able to find help. Before leaving, he looked at me with gratitude, his eyes full of relief. I knew our encounter had been more than coincidence. After saying goodbye, I returned to the lonely road, driving into the darkness of the night. I reflected on what I had just experienced. The mysterious lights and the man's fear still lingered in my thoughts. I researched the area's history and discovered past reports of unexplained lights in the sky and accounts of people feeling watched and pursued on that very road. Some even claimed they were drawn toward a malevolent presence. Though I tried to find rational explanations, I couldn't shake the feeling that something supernatural was at play. Were those lights a message or a warning? Was there an unknown phenomenon in that area disturbing the peace of those who ventured there? Since then, I avoid that road as much as I can, though curiosity and the desire to understand the unexplained still burn within me. I also recognize the limits of my comprehension and the fragility of human existence in the face of forces beyond our reach. As a taxi driver, I still take people to their destinations, but now I'm more aware that this world holds things beyond logic and science. The veil between the tangible and intangible can lift at any moment, revealing a terrifying, unknown realm. Every time I drive down a lonely road at night, I feel a deep sense of vulnerability and a strange connection to those who have experienced the paranormal. My mind is now open to the inexplicable, but I also carry with me a respectful caution toward the unknown. So as I continue my work, I wonder what other encounters await me on the lonely roads of this life. I keep my mind open, ready for the unimaginable, knowing that dark, mysterious secrets still lurk in the shadows of the solitary highways.